Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor in cold and windy New Orleans. Of course, I'm sure people in other parts of the country are scoffing at me. By cold, I mean like 65 in a mild breeze. Yeah. Rocky, still in Tel Aviv. You're not coming over till next week, I believe.
Yep, still here for another week. So
we will be seeing each other at Relativity Fest. And I just learned, I don't know if you saw the party, this company, Amanda, Relativity does a user group conference every year, but they have a big party one night at different museums or public entities like the pier or whatever.
They did House of Blues one year.
Yeah. It's going to be at the Field Museum, I believe, this year.
Yep.
So
yeah, that jungle theme.
So, the jungle theme.
Yeah, bring your safari.
Yeah, safari hat going.
And so, as you can see, we are really pleased to have with us today Amanda Brown from the Lagniappe Law Lab. Your title is Executive Director, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And did I hear you say earlier you're in Ponchatoula?
I am, yes. I'm living in Ponchatoula and have an office in New Orleans that since the pandemic I've rarely been to, but it's still there.
Are you is your office in the bar building? Are you with like the Bar Foundation?
Building, yeah.
So I got a few friends there. Sean Hollahan's an old friend down at the bar, and my buddy Eric, I think still works out of that building as well. So yeah, I know a few of the people there, and it's great. So Amanda, welcome and thanks for joining us, taking some time.
Sure.
We're going to lead right off with our standard lead question is always, how did you get into this wacky business of ours? The law and technology, oh my God. And you have a particular focus, which is on service to the rest of us, as I call it. I started off my career years and years, way too many years ago, I won't talk about it, in what was then called Boston Legal Aid. I don't even know what they're called now, but you know, back in the days when we were allowed to do class action plaintiff suits, before Ronnie Reagan cut us off at the knees. And not that he wasn't a great president for all our viewers.
Oh, hold on, we're getting off topic here, Tom.
Yeah.
No politics.
Well, no. Historical note. The focus.
Talk about that later.
The focus of legal aid offices was shifted dramatically when they were disallowed from doing any class action proactive consumer lawsuits, and so many smaller groups grew up. I think similar to what you're doing, Amanda, with the Lagniappe Law Lab. It fell on the shoulders of people to seek out funding and take that on themselves. So tell us a little bit about
there. Yeah, let's get some history in first.
Well, you know, here's the other thing, and this is now I'm showing my age. Amanda is so young that her historical timeline is, you know, really compressed compared to mine. So tell us
I
how that.
I think it's just, Tom, you're so old. I think that's
well. My doctor pointed that out to me yesterday. Thanks. Thanks for bringing that up again.
Anytime. So Amanda, how did you get into law?
Yeah, well, I mean, just like everybody else, not everybody else, but more and more people are not going the path that I did now. But I'm a trained lawyer. I went to school in New Orleans at Loyola, graduated law school in 2016 and took the bar, passed the bar, and I practiced in legal aid right after getting out of law school. It was like, it's an interesting kind of weird, wonky path, I guess, as you can imagine. Of course, sometimes when I say it now, I'm like, I think this is how it's kind of been traditionally for people in my position. But Loyola actually has a technology clinic program. Yeah. And I remember I was in the housing clinic in my last year of law school, and it was going great. You know, it was a 1 semester thing, and I had planned, oh, I'll go do this technology clinic just because it's interesting. You know, it's something that I've not seen before, never had exposure to within the law school context. And I was starting to doubt myself, towards the end of that first semester, like, oh, I really enjoy this housing work. I feel like I'm getting a lot of practical experience. And, even my friends that were planning on, kind of coming over to the tech clinic with me changed their mind. So I was, almost influenced to continue doing my housing cases and working in the clinic and getting that like true practical experience that we know is typically lacking from the law school education unless you're going through programs like that. But I changed my mind. I said, no, I'm going to go. I have this interest in this and understanding how this can possibly apply to the legal field. And I learned some very basic coding, HTML, calling back to my MySpace days. The end of the semester, we're like starting to learn JavaScript. So it's just a really basic overview of how to design interfaces somewhat, but also think about how to structure data and how understanding use cases of how people can use technology to how that can intersect with the law. And we, in a clinic setting, we were focused on kind of an access to justice purview. I think the app that I built was like a contact your legislator app. And it was, like a cute little, politically motivated way to engage people and like to use that source of the government to its full extent. Because now that's an easier process even today online. But so that was my app. And then I went to practice, as I said, in legal aid and never really thought about it until probably about 6 months into my work. I was doing disaster recovery work as a disaster attorney with Southeast Louisiana Legal Services.
Yep.
And you it's overwhelming. Number one, you're a new
that'll keep you busy.
Yeah, you're a new practitioner. You come in to what amounts to an overwhelming need from people that you don't, as the attorney, don't even see, because a lot of people get screened out at the front, and still recognizing like, okay, this isn't exactly a sustainable way to help as many people as possible. So one thing that I had worked on was another app. Goes big surprise, go figure. An app with Southeast, as well as the Stanford Legal Design Lab and the ABA's Center for Innovation. The Center for Innovation had kind of just gotten started. I think they were maybe a year or two old at that point, and were looking to make impacts through partnerships and app development. So we worked on kind of designing a more efficient way for people to collect information that's required to do title clearing and successions. As a disaster recovery attorney, that was an issue that we saw a lot.
Let me interject for a second here, Rocky. That's what the rest of the world calls probate.
Oh,
Successions.
All good.
okay.
Yeah.
Title clearing.
No, I'm following. We're all good still. Although I do want to go back. I want to go back a little bit. And
also let me interject, if I could, a little historical note. There have been a wave, I'm sure you were involved with some of it, Amanda, after hurricanes, especially Katrina, but a lot of the others as well. There's a real history in Louisiana of in the below median income community of houses being passed down from generation to generation as they lived in the house with no transfers. If you went and did a title search, the title might show, somebody from 80, 90, 100 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so there's been wave after wave of legal efforts to help those people clear the title, because the insurance companies didn't mind taking their money. Yeah. And then when it came to pay off, it was,
you don't own it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We can only give money to the
actual legal owner. Right.
Yeah.
So Amanda, I just, before we get too far ahead, I want to back up a little bit. Did you always know that you wanted to be an attorney? Like kind of, you went to law school, but how did that come about? What was your path that brought you to law school to begin with?
Yeah, so this is my villain origin story, I guess, when it comes
Yep.
to deciding that I wanted to be an attorney. And it's something, honestly, that I probably put on the back burner. You know how it goes. Anyway, so when I was about probably 15 or 16 years old, I lived with my grandparents at the time, and my grandpa, love him, God rest his soul. He was a farmer, and I would go out with him on, field, should check out the fields every couple days and stuff like that.
Where was he? Where was the farm?
So we're originally from Concordia Parish, over by Natchez, Mississippi. That's usually people know where that is, but they don't know where Concordia Parish is.
Beautiful area.
So we were surveying the land one day, and somebody had like come and completely destroyed some parts of like the land where, he would like store equipment and things like that. And I just remember I was so mad, like, oh my gosh, who did this? Like, what are we going to do about this? Just a righteous little teenager. And he was like, well, lawyers can help with that. Like lawyers can, help you assert your rights, I guess, and make sure that people that rights are wronged or whatever. So I had definitely took that away in the back of my mind. And I, going through college and everything, I had so many plans, easily distracted is what we'll call it. Many different majors, and I finally graduated undergraduate with like an economics degree. And I thought, really, like, what do I want to do? They don't teach you how to know what you want to do with your life in like high school and college. So I was thinking back to that, and like, just, I guess, kind of the core feelings about having injustices, no matter how small they are, and like what the, who can help with that. So that's kind of how I, that was one of the influencing factors for ultimately going to law school. And while I'm not a property lawyer, I still feel like some of that little righteousness of like righting the wrongs is obviously still there.
It's that the fighting spirit.
Yeah.
The fighting spirit there that you're taking a part of. Okay, so now we're jumping back ahead, and so you start designing these apps, which is kind of cool. And did you always kind of have a technology bend growing up? I mean, obviously you're young enough. You grew up with computers in school and people, utilizing technology. But were you always kind of leaning towards the technology side, or was that something that came new in law school and later?
I think it wasn't for me. It never considered it a possibility until then. In understanding like tech intersects with everything. It's not just, you don't have to just go be in the tech field. I would say that I was always a consumer, of technology. You could find me at 10 years old, sneaking up at midnight, dialing into my Neopets game and dialing into MySpace and, things like that, that just were like core to my experience as a child and growing up. But I never really thought that would be something that I would do until I guess I found that intersection that made sense for me and, how I felt like I wanted to contribute to the world.
Right. Okay. So now let's jump back to the story. Sorry for taking that little
no,
detour.
sorry. It's like a long-winded story.
So you're working Southeast Legal Services and helping out people with flood relief and hurricane relief, and where to go from there. So you said you had developed these couple of apps to help manage and kind of streamline the process a little bit. Right?
So I guess that's where it really starts to pick up, because that's where I was introduced to the ABA Center for Innovation. So I had been I will not say that I was responsible in any stretch of the imagination for the development of what was ultimately the flood-proof app, which was designed by the Stanford Legal Design Lab. I was just kind of contributing to that project with Southeast. I was kind of representing their interest, I guess, and the client interest, the client experience. But as I mentioned, I was introduced to the Center for Innovation, and having worked with them through that project, I heard that they were having their inaugural fellowship program. So I applied for that, ended up joining that program as their Microsoft NextGen Fellow, where I got to go work on the Legal Service Corporation's Legal Navigator project, their triage portal project.
Yep.
So I spent a year in Redmond with the Microsoft team, again, kind of contributing and, giving input, working on a number of other things maybe that weren't directly related to that too. But just getting really exposed, being within the kind of legal operations department, getting exposed to a lot of ways that we can like apply computation to help lawyers do their jobs better, help self-represented people or people that are just kind of entering the justice system learn about their problems and things like that. So I finished out my year and came back to Louisiana, where I started just doing consulting work with the Bar Foundation.
And sorry, were you working within Microsoft Legal, or was it part of one of the other product teams that does some of the pro bono work?
So it was their legal group. We did interface, and I think ultimately the pro bono team probably picked up some of the responsibility for resourcing, if you will. But yes, I was kind of living within, I think it was CELA was the name of it, legal, their legal department.
So Rocky, was that before your time? Rocky worked at Microsoft Legal for a while.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I was on that team from 2018 to October of last year. So
okay, so I came in, you left, or I left,
exactly.
and you
We
came
in. Just missed each other, but
yeah, I think that was over August 2018, and then I came back home to Louisiana, started consulting with the Bar Foundation on technology projects, access to justice specific projects. And then ultimately that kind of, allowed us to see, okay, there's a really big need for this. There's a lot of possibility. So then Lagniappe Law Lab was born in 2019, and I've kind of been doing, I've been doing that ever since.
Very cool. Very cool. So what are some of the different types of projects that you guys work on now?
Yikes. Maybe too many. I'm gonna go ahead and just say that right now. But when I try and like contextualize it for people and just explain what I do, I look at it in two kind of buckets. The first is that we're really focused on improving the public's experience for learning about their legal issue, taking some steps to resolve that, and getting connected to resources, referrals, things like that. So under that side, I have my little shtick. It's like inform, empower, and connect. So informing by developing really good, high quality, plain language content and education resources for people, empowering them with self-help tools, legal products, things like document automation and things like that. And then the connect side is really focused on streamlining and making that experience of like getting to the right legal aid organization a lot better. So that's kind of the public facing side, but we also work with legal aid organizations and I guess law adjacent programs to help them better, adopt technology, improve the way that they do their work. So that might include things like case management, but it also might include things like understanding data collection better and like how we can do analysis to better serve the clients and things like that. So it really runs the gambit. But on that public facing side, I guess specific examples would be the Justice Bus project that we're getting ready to actually have a call with the vendor tomorrow to hopefully figure out how we can get this thing somewhere where they can actually retrofit it into
Well,
what
you're pointing over, so why don't you
Oh,
talk? tell a little
it's
bit about
outside
that
my window here.
Yeah. So what
Um,
is the Justice Bus?
So the goal of the bus is to really, I look at it as a way to bring resources to people where they actually are. So we're not a direct legal service organization. We really only focus on some of those wraparound aspects to getting people help. But everything is online, and ironically during the pandemic, when everybody was going online, we're noticing and seeing that some of the and researching to understand that some of the people that have the most needs in our states don't have reliable access to internet. They don't have reliable comprehensive computer skills. And so the bus and some of this physical expansion is an effort to bring that to them and help kind of catch people, whether that's at church fairs, at, clinic events, or festivals and things like that, and really just help raise awareness that, oh, you could have some type of legal problem and we can help, we can help you with that, or we can try and make sure that you get help for that problem. So it's really all about that outreach and education in especially the rural communities where we see some of those challenges for people to recognize and then act on getting assistance for their legal problems.
Yeah, people tend to think of Louisiana as New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and they forget that like much of the South, the Southeast at least, it's a rural state, and you start getting north of I-10, you might have some pockets of good internet access, Alexandria, Shreveport. I don't know if I can even say Fun Row or not, but we do. I help with the bar. The Louisiana Bar does CLEs in sort of the same context. Sean Holohan runs it, and they call it the Four Corners. Like, we're going to get out there because those people aren't going to come to CLE events. They're not going to travel all the way down here. So how do we get out there? And then we realize as we get into some of those rural areas, there's little or no high-speed internet access, and what internet access there is might be at a library or a kiosk at the courthouse or something. It's really upsetting to see that many people, and it's the same in Mississippi and Alabama, and I'm sure it's the same in southern Arkansas. It's a huge problem. So I applaud that effort, just getting that outreach out to them and saying, look, there are some resources and we'll help you get in touch with it. Reminds me, I grew up in upstate Vermont, very rural area. And
you didn't have internet there?
Oh no, Al Gore hadn't invented it yet.
I was like, I don't think it was a product of the location. It's maybe the time.
Oh, different issue.
We didn't have TV.
Yeah.
Literally, I remember when we got our first TV, and the telephones on our street, when we got them, when I was very young, we didn't have telephones. Then it was a party line. Everybody on the street shared the same line. Yeah, which was fun.
I'm sure.
That sounds fun. That does sound fun.
Yeah. But what we had in much of New England was the bookmobile for your library. The bookmobile would show up at the grocery store
once
parking
a week
lot.
or every other week, right?
Yeah,
show up.
exactly. Right, 2 Wednesday nights a month, and the bookmobile would pull up and bring you knowledge.
Right.
Wow.
Bring the world.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's great to see people being inventive about that, and I really applaud that effort, Amanda. It's well needed.
Absolutely. And Amanda, I would assume that a lot of and maybe I'm wrong, but I would assume that a lot of the work actually has to be done when you're designing technology for this population, that, the underserved population. A lot of it actually has to be mobile, right?
Right.
Is that correct? Because people, they're more likely to have a phone than they are to have actual computer or laptop or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we did so part of another project that I had been working on for the last couple of years, maybe 2.5 years, was kind of some assessment and strategic planning, but then some implementation of physical access point locations. And through that project, we did research in some of these really rural parishes. And while we would talk to like community leaders, and this is why it's so important to do user research. We love the community leaders, and they're definitely better than what we had before, which was nothing. But it's when you start digging deeper, you definitely realize most people do have phones and they're comfortable using them, and they have developed some type of strategy, whether that's, you know, if it's at their home or going to a friend's house or pulling up at the parking lot at McDonald's,
right?
Internet
Yeah.
or, you know, using that resource. The majority of people were very comfortable using that as a means to access things online. Whereas you can hear from community leaders like, no, people don't have phones, or they're not, things like that. So it's an interesting research question. And I'm also going to say that it probably differs everywhere you go. So, depending on the parts of the state and like, I guess maybe desperation levels of, you know, what other infrastructure around them exists to enable that type of activity.
Right. If you don't have a cell phone with a cell phone tower within miles, then it doesn't really help to have a phone.
Right.
So
yeah. It was interesting because I was telling Amanda before we got started, you know, we lost internet service here for 3 days, thanks to our wonderful internet monopoly provider, Cox Cable. It's disconcerting. I felt like I've been disconnected from the Matrix. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
I got no, you know,
Well, that's something too. We take it such for granted.
Exactly.
We do.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah.
I could not imagine not having internet. I mean, obviously that's my entire job, but even still.
To use it for all sorts of information. And then I had to revert to using the cell phone, which was fine for gathering information and getting news feeds, checking my email. Typing was a bit problematic.
Right. When you actually have to get work done, it can.
Yeah.
It can be
Writing a
difficult.
paper was not something that I could easily do.
So Amanda, what are some of the other projects that the lab works on? Just can you give us some more examples?
What's coming up? What do you got going on? Yeah.
I am a big believer, and the crypto community will probably come after me. I'm actually a big believer in like centralization. So I don't like to consider that we have tons of different little projects. I like to believe that we have a program, like our major program is the Louisiana Civil Legal Navigator, which is kind of a centralized resource for people to find legal information, get those referrals, you know, have access to forms, the universe of things that are available to them over the course and the lifespan of that legal problem, kind of no matter where they are on that journey. So that is I guess that's kind of a cop-out answer. We're constantly trying to build in microservices and add new information and things like that to support that. Because one of the things that I noticed when I came in, just in like a consulting capacity, is like, why do we have so many resources? I have many theories. I'm not going to explain them here, but it's just, I view that as whenever we're disaggregated, when we have all these disaggregated services, you know that the legal process is already convoluted enough, right? So not having these broken up paths to resolution is a layer of complication for people on top of what's already an extremely stressful situation. Yeah. So that's my theory, is like consolidation, standardization of formats, building in, simplification, and like building in deeper services when we can and when it makes sense. So that's, that's my answer. But within that, we definitely have focus areas that were, we recently just built out a new service for, self-help, habitability, like going through the process of exercising your rights for habitability claims and making sure that you're creating a good body of evidence and making sure that you don't, not follow the law, because if you don't do that process correctly, then you're putting yourself at risk for eviction. So that's, one recent one. We're also starting to look at, we kind of have a process where we're building out the universe of content that we have, and then within that looking for opportunities to like pull off deeper services. So the current area that we're focused on is like foreclosure and loan modification issues for
Right.
Louisiana. So we're currently building out content, and we're looking at ways that we can help people automate a loan modification letter or give them guides to negotiate with their mortgage company, things like that. So generally, that's, we're focused here at the programmatic level, and we're just, moving from legal area to legal area to kind of build that out
As you find the need.
further.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if somebody wanted to answer one of those questions, do they go to the Navigator, and is the Navigator on your website? How would they, if I had a question about an eviction and I wanted to look for resources, what would I do?
So the Louisiana Legal Navigator.org is our public facing site that has, it's kind of the collection of resources that we're building out. So you could go there, and then we have a number of pathways that you could take depending on what you want to accomplish, kind of where you are in your journey. And eviction is, one of those areas. We can give you, in some cases where we don't have, if you can imagine that there's 90 plus civil legal topics that really need in-depth explanation. We haven't accomplished all of that. There's no way that we can build all that out.
Give it time.
So
Give it time.
some,
Yeah.
Some are shortened pathways where we're just trying to refine, like, how is this issue that there's like a top level issue, like a housing problem. And then maybe right now, because we're still working on foreclosure, you go to foreclosure. We give you foreclosure resources that we have. But for example, in like an eviction case, you get a much deeper experience where we can understand, like, have you already received your eviction notice, or who did that come from? Was it in the proper form? How many days until court? Things like that, to give you really customized and targeted information and referrals. So it's a differing experience depending on have we gotten to that topic yet. But we're continuing to expand all those resources all the time. Well,
evictions, as I'm sure you know, is a huge one. The national statistics are that over 2/3 of the people who appear on some sort, if they even appear in eviction, are pro se. They don't have an attorney, so they need that resource. How about domestic issues? Is that on there? Yes, we have. Our deepest experiences on that are divorces, child custody, and then of course we have resources for most other issues. It's just not to that level of granularity.
Right.
Yeah. So
and
you can find information on just about anything.
Cool. How do you actually build these? Do you have a staff? Do you work with volunteers? Kind of what's the process there?
So I have a staff person that is our content director, and she's kind of responsible for overseeing and developing content, so that kind of major chunk of work that's being done on that side. And then I do have an intern that supports that work as well, and I also, because we have other focus areas, self-help, like product development, I am typically doing that. And other consulting work, I'm responsible for that. And I do have an intern that's helping me with document automation right now as well. So it's coming along. We tried to use volunteers in the past, and I think number one, we were just getting started. And to be honest, we probably had no business trying to have people come in and do something that we weren't even sure how we were doing it yet. So it probably was a little off-putting, I'll admit. But, you know, subject matter experts do help us a lot with app development and just understanding logic and, you know, conditions and things like that. I'm thankful I'm a lawyer, so I can do,
Direct
you know,
it.
I
Right.
can do a lot of that, but I'm,
Right.
you know, I haven't been practicing child custody for 10 years. Like there's obviously nuances to those things that it's important to have volunteers and subject matter experts kind of support that work.
Okay, well, one of the things that we'll do is when we post this, we'll make sure to include some links and
Yes.
directions for some people, anyone who wants to help out.
Right.
If they've got various different skills to help out in different ways, however we can assist. So yeah, but okay, awesome. This has been really cool. You know, it's something a little bit different than what we typically host in terms of e-discovery and technology, but it is tied in because you did mention collections, so that automatically means that, and you mentioned data, which means okay, we're relevant. So we're good.
I know at first I was like, I don't know if I should go on an e-discovery podcast considering I know nothing about e-discovery.
Okay, so here's a statistic for you. The National Center for State Courts for the last 3 years in a row has found that the #1 case type for e-discovery requests at the state court level is domestic.
No
Right?
surprise.
No surprise, right?
Yep.
Everybody wants the other side's cell phone or their Excel spreadsheets or their email or their chat. And in the area where you play, I'm sure people are confounded about how to deal with that. What do I do? What do I ask for? So
Right.
I'll circle
Yeah,
back to
maybe
you.
I can
about-
learn some things from you guys to incorporate into our guides, you know.
I'll circle back to you about providing you some resources for that because
Awesome.
it's all about data now. Everything is about
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I loved having you on because I wanted to, we have some very nice high level esoteric discussions with people who are great thinkers. But you know what? Somebody's got to go out there and do this. Somebody's got to get out there where the rubber meets the road and deal with the 2/3 of the people in this country who don't have adequate legal representation.
Mhm.
Yep.
So again, I really applaud what you're doing and the scope of what you're doing. So, Rocky, I'm
Absolutely.
sorry, I'm sure you have a
Yep.
couple of really cool questions to ask now, right?
Yeah, let's switch over to some fun ones as we wrap this up. So I will not ask you about football or sports because
Thank you.
we already established that to begin with. But let's go with travel. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? And you're more than welcome to say Louisiana, but but if you had your choice of anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Okay, I will preface this by saying I'm not super well traveled outside the United States. So that definitely clouds my decision. However, I have been to Germany and I loved it. You know, in the Rhine region area. And there were in the Black Forest, it was amazing. And why I chose that is because I felt like when I was there, I don't know, there's something intangible about it. I need to do an ancestry test or something because I was like, I think these are my people. It just
Right.
felt like, home. So I would choose that most likely. It was beautiful and
That's awesome. Yeah,
just
that
felt, there's like
qualifies.
some intrinsic feelings that you can't explain, but that's my answer.
Okay. What's your go-to comfort movie?
Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. Probably. Which one am I gonna pick? Yeah, I'll be honest and say I love the Pitch Perfect movies.
Okay.
I watch
There
them
you
all
go.
the time. I'm pretty sure that I watched the second one over the weekend, and that was
Much,
probably
much better than the
15th
first
time.
one.
Yeah.
I like
That's
this one.
definitely the best one. And weirdly enough, it's full of Germans. Like,
That is true. That is true.
Nice.
we're onto something here.
We're seeing a pattern here.
So I do love those movies.
Cool. What's your favorite book?
Oh gosh, that one. I don't think I actually have a favorite book. I'll be honest. I
Okay.
read and then things go out of my head. I try. I don't know if I have ADD or something, but I'll be reading. I'm like, oh, this is a great book, and then I just throw it out the window. I don't know. I think it was probably
Okay.
because one too many of those book fairs, in school
Right.
feed into us. And then law school came along. Like, I don't think I actually like reading anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of reading. So, are you more productive in the morning or at night?
I want to believe that I'm more productive in the morning, so I make accommodations for that. But then 5 o'clock rolls around, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have all this energy and I can do all these things. It's probably because I'm being left alone by that point.
Okay.
But yeah, I do think I wouldn't say nighttime, but probably evening is technically when I'm more productive.
Got it. Okay. And this, the last one that I got for you, is if you could go back to yourself right before you started law school and give yourself one short piece of advice, what would it be?
Mine will definitely be don't doubt yourself. I did a lot of that in law school, to the point where I think back to opportunities that I had that I turned down because I was afraid of either how I'd be perceived or thinking that I couldn't actually accomplish what other people were clearly indicating I could accomplish. So for sure, I think about some decisions haunt me, to some extent. I don't regret that because I don't think that I probably would have ended up on the same path that I am now. But I think I'm here because at a certain point I stopped doubting myself. So that would be my advice to myself prior, especially throughout law school. It's hard. Okay. Imposter syndrome is real.
Yep, it is. Tom, it's all yours.
So I got 2 questions. One is a brief one that we ask everybody. Beatles or Stones?
Oh my God. I'm gonna say the Beatles.
Of course.
I guess I am, because
good move. Good
does
move.
Everybody.
Good move. I fully support that choice.
Could I tell you more than like 2 songs? Probably not. But
that's all right. Rocky can carry that road. Rocky can carry that weight, if you'll pardon the pun.
I'll go with the Foo Fighters even.
There you go. Now we're talking. All right. And our last question that we ask everyone is, if you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, and we use that definition very broadly, who would that person be? They can be living or dead, does not have to be a contemporary. Who would that person be, and what would you do with them for that day?
Okay, so mine is a super practical answer because I'm super passionate about what I do and I want to keep learning about it. And so I would choose probably Rebecca Sandifer. She's a very prominent researcher in the access to justice field. And I'm a researcher at heart. I think even when I'm designing products, I'm researching on the background, or I'm figuring out ways to smartly collect data that can give me insights to like why people do certain things. So I would choose her. And I mean, it's probably boring, but I would just try and soak up as much knowledge as possible. Like, she knows a lot about why people do certain, I think she has a sociology background. So she's understanding that component of people and really understands the broadest scope of like how the legal system interacts, different pieces of the system interact with each other and how that impacts self-represented and, underprivileged people that can't afford attorneys. So maybe I would say, like, realistically, we could have all these conversations like on the beach in Bali or something. That would be ideal. And, get a few cocktails in, you never know, like you could probably learn a lot of stuff that way, but that would be, that's my, with minimal time to prepare, I would choose. Right, that would be really cool.
It's a good choice. It's a good choice.
Like, let's share this podcast.
All right. Excellent. Well, thanks again for your time. We've been talking today with Amanda Brown, the Executive Director the Lagniappe Law Lab located in New Orleans, Louisiana, but serving all of Louisiana, greater Louisiana and the Southeast. So thanks so much for your time, Amanda. We'll be sure to have some of those links that you mentioned accompanying this video when we post it. And I really appreciate your time. Rocky, a pleasure as always. And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll look forward to seeing you next time in the Discovery Channel.
Thanks.